I see Cleo. She's like Alfred Hitchcock. She has to make her appearance in every video, her cameo. Or that guy from Marvel, I can't think of his name. Anyway, welcome to the July front yard garden tour. I have been thinking a lot this month about patience in the garden. I haven't always been a patient person. I've worked on it. I think I'm more patient now than I used to be. I think that came with the chilling out as I've aged. It's not always there though. And gardening does require patience. I think the reason this came to mind is I watch other garden channels on YouTube, and when I see some of the amazing gardens, sometimes I forget that those gardens are mature gardens and that they've taken a while to get where they are. Case in point, if you have not discovered Moxie Gardens, I'd like to encourage you to check that channel out. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and link that below. I can't think of the guy's name who is the mastermind behind that garden, but he did a really cool before and after video this week. Coincidentally, I had done a before and after video this week too, but what he did, which was really brilliant, is he took photos of his garden that were the before photos and held them right over the area that he was going to shoot the after shot at, and then he just moved the photo out of the way. So you really need to check that out. It's really cool. But what I was reminded of as I watched his video is that that garden didn't happen overnight. I mean, it's obvious when you look at it. It's stunning. I think he mentioned that he's lived in that house either 7 or 9 years. So I'm reminding myself to be patient. I'm actually really surprised with how far it's come in such a short amount of time. This area behind me, which is what I tend to focus on, I started it about a year ago in terms of carving out the beds. My husband helped. But planting didn't happen until December. I think that was when we planted the initial plants. Really, it's pretty incredible that it looks as mature as it does. It was a struggle. As a person with very limited experience, this area was a challenge. When we moved in, the only things I remember about it is that it had that myrtle and it was in an extremely overgrown state. If you stood on the porch, no one could see that you were standing there. That's how tall it was. And I'm working on bringing it down. In fact, I haven't done both of the hedges. You can't tell right now. I'm going to film that in a little while when there's more shade on it. I'm working on bringing those down so that the bench will be visible. The only other thing I remember being in this area was Mexican primrose, which was pretty, but it only looks pretty when it's in bloom. It looks kind of scraggly the rest of the time. And we were not happy with the area. My husband wanted grass there, and he put in some plugs of the stuff we call lawn here. It's either Bermuda grass or maybe St. Augustine. All I know is it's not my favorite. But anyway, it was green and it looked like a lawn and satisfied that need for green for a while. But eventually it died, and it started to die off, and as the bare spots appeared, we ended up with a lot of weeds. That soil was dying, and I don't think we realized that. Thankfully, I started taking the gardening class that I'm in right now. I started it just about a year ago. Started it in summer of 2020. And it taught me a lot. It taught me things I needed. It didn't teach me everything. I thought it was going to kind of hold my hand and carry me through the process of creating this, but it gave me enough knowledge to move forward. I was still very indecisive. When I was ready to plant things out in December, I think there's a photo in my before and after video, the last video that I uploaded, where you can see the pots just sitting on bare land as I'm trying to decide what goes where and why. And I put everything in the ground hoping for the best. I learned things along the way, and in less than a year I've learned that some things weren't meant to be in certain areas, and I'm sure there's a lot more learning to come. But that's what's great about a garden. It takes time. It teaches you patience, but there's more to it than that. It teaches you what you like, and it teaches you what grows well in an area, because the garden reveals its patterns over time. You know, the sun's always moving, and the amount of sun and shade you get changes, and the angles that the sun come from change, and there's just so many dimensions to it. But I will just end by saying I'm really pleased that we've had as much gratification as we've had in this area, and it gives me hope that with time and with patience that we're going to be able to affect a lot more change in the front yard. We certainly have areas to work on, and you'll see those in this week's video. I am only going to show half of the front garden this week. I've decided that I'd like to keep the videos short, and I want to leave enough time for some of the projects we'll be working on. So you're going to see some of the ugly this week and some of the pretty, and then next week I'll do the other half of the front garden, and I'm going to do that in the back as well. I'm going to split it into two. So I hope you enjoy this week's garden tour video, and I hope you'll come back next week for the other half of the front garden for the month of July. Thanks for watching. So here's the walkway bed. It looks so pretty when it's in bright sunlight. So everything is still doing really great in this bed. My coneflower is ready to give me a whole bunch of flowers, which is very exciting. I'm not too surprised since we are in a nice hot patch of summer. I'm also getting little volunteers all over these beds. This is vinca, and I had white vinca in this bed before and I took it out, so it's left behind its heirs. I still have a few flowers on the Veronica / Speedwell and on the sage. The purple fountain grass is really finally coming into its own, despite the cat's best efforts to eat it all the way back. I did thin out this coreopsis here. There is so much of it, so I need to come in here and tame this. But in between it, I don't know if you can see it, I've got some black-eyed Susans, and then I added a new little pugster butterfly bush, but I cut it way back because it had bloomed and it was looking a little sad, and I put it in the ground even though it's not the right time to plant perennials, and I thought, why not give it an easier job of establishing its roots by taking out some of that foliage. I really love how the lemon coral sedum is looking. It's so bright and cheery, as well as the creeping jenny and the goostrum. All of those three just like punctuate this bed so nicely. I've trimmed this licorice plant a few times, and it's probably a bit of a thug, but I really like it. So I don't have any plans to move it right now. And you can see that I've got a lot of snapdragons kind of still in this area. They're not really flowering much now. I'm sure that's due to the heat, but they're holding on, which is kind of shocking to me. I did have some white blossoms on this end plant just about, I don't know, 2 or 3 days ago. So it was very pretty. It looked nice coming up through that Heliochrysum petiolare. Anyway, there's the walkway bed. So here's the garage bed, and I'm actually starting it from the garage side. I usually come in from the other side first, but you can see we're right next to the garage. So I just gave these cohuhu pittosporums that are in the pots flanking the garage door a trim, and I flipped them around. It's really noticeable on this one, so that I flipped them so that the side that wasn't getting so much sun will get more sun, because I noticed it's just grown a lot less on the side that was facing the garage. This is still my favorite view right here. I did a little bit of moving of plants right down here. I had gotten a salvia that I believe I either had in a pot or in the ground during the last video. It's right up there by the rocks. I got a second salvia, this one, which is a perennial. I don't think that one over there is a perennial. They're both in a deep fuchsia kind of color. They're not a bright light pink, they're not a red, but they're two different shades of a deep pink, almost leaning toward purple. So you can see my other salvia is looking really robust. It doesn't have any flowers on it at the moment, but and it's a little chewed on, as is everything. I really do need to get out here and treat everything with BT, because the caterpillars are really having a heyday, and I have been reluctant to spray anything, but I realize that I'm losing the battle, so I'm going to have to actually bite the bullet and spray. My little petunias that I started from seed, they're called Evening Sensation, and oh man, I love that color. They've wowed me. I was so shocked at how much prettier they are in person than what I expected. I love the way they look near the Dusty Miller. And with this sweet pea shrub, which has also impressed me, it grew a lot more than I expected it to. I read that you don't really need to prune a sweet pea shrub unless you want to prune it for size. And I think I am going to prune it for size. You can see how much it's grown. Well, I don't know if you can compare that to anything, but it's really huge. And I don't really want to have to plant a lot in this bed. I would like it to be a perennial bed with things that are very low maintenance. So it's great in that aspect, but I also don't want it to become a thug. And so I am going to take it back just a little bit. But it was beautiful when it had blooms on it. It's beautiful still. And these are the white Lilliput zinnias. They're so pretty. I'm glad I pinched them back because they're giving me a lot of blossoms, more than just a single flower per stalk. And I've got this one here that hasn't given me any flowers yet, but you can see it's got plenty of little buds that are coming up. My Mexican heather looks really pretty, and even though you can't tell, there is an angelonia right back there. The flowers are almost, well, not the same color, but they're similar in size, and they're in the same, maybe in the same family of colors. It's not really noticeable right now unless I think it really were to take off. Unlike this angelonia, which being a purple really does stand out. And there's some more of that vinca, the seedlings, and I'm not pulling them out. I want to see what they look like when they come up. My lamb's ears are all chomped on, so there's another reason why I need to get in here with BT, and maybe not just BT. Maybe I also need to come in with some sluggo, because I really don't know if this is if this is caterpillar damage. This may be slug damage, just thinking of how low those leaves are. I don't know. We'll see. And then I had planted some white gladiolas in here, and you can see that those are starting to come up. Oh, and I added one more little zinnia in there. So it's the same as the others. The Delamina verbena is coming up. I do not know if it will give me another round of blooms, but it's putting on some nice green foliage. It had gotten very crunchy and crispy, and I'd cut it back. And as you can see, I've cut back the digitalis. And one of them's looking a little crunchy. The other one, not so bad, but I need to cut out some of that brown leaves. Decided I was going to save the seeds on the white foxglove digitalis, and I was taking the seeds out of the stems today and realized I did not take the precautions you should take. So if you don't know, they're very poisonous. So when you decide to save seeds, you probably ought to wear gloves, probably ought to wear a mask, and an air filtering mask. And I didn't do that today. And then after I'd been handling them, and I think I was thinking that when they're dried, they're not poisonous anymore. But after I'd been handling them, I went and touched the side of my nose, and I thought, oh no, what if I've gotten, I looked it up because I was worried. What if I'd gotten some of the powder or the whatever into the membranes in my nose? And I looked it up, and I read that even a very small amount, and even after it's dried, it can be toxic. So lesson learned, I have to be very cautious in the future. So here is my bougainvillea, also very chewed up. And as you can see, these gladiolas, very chewed up. This is the pink snapdragons that used to be over in the corner back there by the rosemary. I just couldn't bear to throw them straight in the trash. I do need to cut them back. They were still in flower. They did look a little wilty when I pulled them up, but then we had some really hot sun and they got very, very wilty. So I think if I cut them back, I may be able to, I don't know, I may be able to keep them for a little while. Otherwise, they are possibly going to be gone soon. I trimmed the boxwoods that are in these two little terracotta pots. They're still not looking very much like each other, but it matters less and less because they're just in the midst of a whole thing here, so they can do their own thing. I gave this guy a little bit of a trim. I didn't really use any shears. I just kind of with a hand pruner, kind of went in and selectively cut back a few of the really overgrown branches, but I would like to pull that out and give it a good, more tight shearing. And I did the same thing. I shouldn't say I did the same thing. I tucked the strands of this fig that were kind of starting to just wildly pull away from the sphere form, kind of like this one here is doing. I tucked them back around each other to make it more tight, and then I tried once again. I think I try this every time I make an adjustment. I try to straighten that ball, but it's not on a very solid base. It was part of a dried flower arrangement. It has very short little legs and it does not want to stand up straight. So there you go. The arborvitae is still looking great. There are new suckers at the bottom of this red bud that I need to pull out. The impatiens are looking very pretty. This plumbago is struggling a bit. It seems to be a more thirsty plant than I realized. It gets dried out pretty quickly. It's in a pot, so I'm sure that's part of it as well. So it's the first thing to tell me when this whole area needs to be watered, because it's a drama queen and it lets all of its limbs hang limp when it needs water. The geranium is still giving me blossoms, and it's looking, I think it's happy here. It's looking a little big for its pot, so I might have to pot that up. The bird bath, it could use some work. It's got some algae in it, and I need to figure out, I think there's a product you can put in to keep the bird bath from getting algae, and if there is, if you know what it is, please put it in my comments. If not, I'll do some research and see if I can't find something. I also finally trimmed my triple ball boxwood, and it's kind of hard to know what to trim and what not to trim when it's so little. I can see that it's a little boxier than I want it to be. And then for the two top balls, I cut, but there's no real ball shape to them right now. But I cut anyway because, you know, cutting encourages new growth. So that's what I need. I need it to flush out some growth so that I can really start training it into more of a rounded shape. I've still not gotten any flowers on the perennial flax, but it's looking green. It doesn't look like it wants to die. I never did thin it out. And then I've got this Blazing Stars, I believe it's called, Liatris, and it's just starting to put some color into these stalks. So I think the flowers are not far behind. There's about, 3 of them right here. I don't know if you can make them all out, but I think those will look really pretty when they flower. And I just learned today how to propagate this live forever sedum. So that's on my to-do list. I'm going to take some cuttings and see if I can't get me some more plants. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to point out. I've got some lovely little sedum down there that I really like. I don't remember the name of it. I will put that on screen. And then I do have some hollyhocks back there, very hard to see. They're night watchmen, and I'm waiting, and I don't think we're going to see anything spectacular from them this year because I think they're a spring flowering plant, and I believe they're a biennial, which means they're just putting on their roots and their growth this year, and then I'll be seeing flowers in the spring. So that is the garage bed, and I'll give you a long shot of the bench. I did move things around here. I didn't point that out because I believe at the end of the last video I pointed out how unhappy I was with this area. So there's a new plant stand back here that I found at a flea market, and I really like it. It's very chippy and shabby chic. And other than that, I don't think I've changed anything, but you know, it was enough. It was enough. I'm not unhappy with this area anymore, at least not for the moment, except for that. That pot looks out of place, and those snapdragons look pretty sad, so I guess they're not going to stay. Here's a little closer look at the porch. I don't usually film the porch because there's not a whole lot going on here, let's be honest. But I did want to point out that I got this new rug at a local thrift store, and while it looks great right now, having just been installed, I'm not sure if it can stay here because I expect it'll collect a lot of debris, and I don't know how easy it's going to be to keep cleaned. My plan right now is to just brush it off with a broom. We'll see how well that works out. I also would like to replace this side table here. Not really digging this table. And I probably should put a real living plant here rather than this fake topiary that's been here forever. But the porch, other than that, is looking pretty good. I do still have plans to paint my front door. I think I talked about that in an earlier video. I'd like to probably do it black, and more than likely going to do it with some chalk paint. So my dilemma had been, would the black look good with that ornament on the top, but I think it'll be fine. I didn't trim these boxwoods here. They really haven't grown that much. I probably could tighten them up a little bit. I do need to take care of the threshold. Look how awful that looks. All in good time, all in good time. Okay, so here's the porch. I'm trying to work with what lighting I have. Not very good lighting, I might add. It's partially in shade, but I like how it's looking. The little Wheeler's Dwarf Pittosporums that I've got down here in the front, right there, where's my finger? Right there. They've got a lot of new growth. You can probably see that there. I did give this little boxwood, baby gem boxwood, another trim, and so the spiral effect is showing up a little bit better. Do need to mulch that. I pulled the pansies. I had white pansies in this pot. I pulled those out, so it's looking kind of bare and spare, but I haven't really thought about what I'll put in there yet. My pineapple coleus is really doing great. I've had to trim it back a couple of times, and you can see that the impatiens, which was once sorry, sad little clearance plant in both of these pots, the white impatiens, they've actually taken off, and they're giving the begonias a run for their money. But like with my other plants, I'm seeing a lot of chewage, so I need to treat this area. So, take a quick look at the myrtles. I've done more trimming on this one here than I have on this one here on the right. There's a little differential in height here. The one on the right's a little bit taller. They're both kind of bald in the center. I'll get a little closer and you can see that. Because I was pruning from the inside to try to take the height down and leave the front a little bit untouched so that from the street the view wouldn't be so shocking. So they've really filled in quite a lot, and I don't feel too bad now taking them down a lot from the top and starting to shape them more. The catmint is looking really good. I had trimmed it back really hard after it bloomed the first time, and it is giving me some flowers. Nothing to write home about, but it does look pretty. There's a dahlia back here. You can kind of see it there, the darker foliage. I've got 3 of those. No sign of a flower yet. I have Lysianthus, and I've got a few that have died. So there's one of the ones that have died. That one seems like it's struggling a little, but then the others are doing okay. You can see there's flower buds on the one to the right there and the one in the middle, and this one's got some flowers that are starting to look a little tired. The 2 azaleas, these encore azaleas, there's one here and one there, those have not bloomed again since their first couple of blooms in the spring. I bought them in the fall last year and they were covered in blooms. I don't know if they're primarily a fall bloomer. I'm not sure if I mentioned what this is. This ground cover, it's not really a ground cover, I don't think. It's Bacopa. It was covered in little white flowers in the spring. You usually see those as a spiller in container plantings, but I really like how it looks here. It surprised me. That wasn't what I expected it to do, but it's quite lovely. Here's another one of those vinca volunteers, a white vinca, I'm guessing. And then I'm getting a little bit of flowering on the petunias, not much. Still have not put these carnations into the ground. They continue to throw out a few flowers here and there. I have not had any flowers from the perennial flax here. There's another Lysianthus back there. You can see it's starting to bud up a little bit. And there's one over here with some buds. I have not planted the boxwoods. Like the carnations, the reason these are all still in pots is the weather. I just don't want to be putting them into the ground in the heat. I think I might be okay to do it in this area because this is an area that gets a lot of afternoon shade, but I've kind of been holding out hoping we would get some cooler weather. We did have some predictions of 80-degree weather. Not 80, I shouldn't say 80, in the 80s, the higher 80s. And it kept showing up on the 10-day forecast in the distance. And every time we'd start getting closer to it, it'd get pushed out a little further into the distance until one day they just removed it altogether from the forecast. So we never did dip below the 90s. I've got a petunia right here that has not given me flowers for a little while. Again, I think the petunias may all need to come up soon. I've got lily of the Nile, agapanthus, those are dwarfs, Peter Pans they're called, and then this is a flex lily, and that one has not flowered. So that is where we are at for the month of July, and I really couldn't be happier. This has been a very lovely, fast-growing area, all of it actually, and it makes me happy when I come out here. I do spend time out here. When it's cool enough, I sit in that bench back there and I read or enjoy something to drink. Well, it looks like I'm wilted too, just like that plumbago. Does that make me a drama queen? Anyway, I thank you for watching my July front garden tour, part 1. Check in next week. There'll be another half of the yard to go through. And if you'd like to see more videos from me, you can always subscribe. Please give this one a thumbs up if you liked it, and there's a bell that you can click on if you'd like to see more new content from me. I think I'll go hydrate with some mango sun tea with passion fruit syrup in it. Yum, it's really good. You should try it. See you next time.